How to be with meaninglessness and pointlessness. A talk with Unmani.
So we do these monthly webinars on different themes each time. And if you would like to suggest a theme for a future webinar, you're welcome to write to us, to my assistant Amelia at admin@dietolove.com if you want to suggest a theme. So our theme today, how to be with meaninglessness and pointlessness. Sounds great fun, huh? But, you know, if you've been on this path of awakening, then no doubt you have encountered a bit of meaninglessness and pointlessness, if not a lot. Yeah, and it's not always easy to really meet the reality of this meaninglessness and pointlessness. Because in our lives as apparent separate separate individuals living this life, we tend to be searching for meaning for me, meaning to give my life purpose. And we search for it because we already have a sense that we don't find any, you know. Like it's like the ultimate question of like, what is the point of all this? You know, I'm here, I'm alive. So what are we doing here? So we try to find meaning by finding, you know, a perfect profession, right? That we really feel is very meaningful, gives a sense of fulfillment and feeds a certain identity of I'm someone who does this. And I'm in some way special in that way because I'm especially this type of profession. Or we look for meaning in relationships, as if meeting somehow the one for you is going to bring that same sense of fulfillment or meaning or point to my life. Or perhaps we become parents and then we imagine that we can have a sense of meaning from our children. Or we achieve different things in our lives, right? And we get a sense of meaning from that. We can also derive a negative sense of meaning. If we've been through something really heavy, really tragic, this also can seem to provide a sense of meaning or a sense of identity. You know, I'm someone who has suffered, and it has like a negative meaning, a very depressing meaning, a very sad meaning. And this again feeds into your identity as a separate me with a meaning that I'm holding on to, that feeds who I think I am, who I believe I am. And then when we start on this path of waking up to the truth of who we really are, and we start to question who we think we are, we question all our beliefs about the identities that we have been playing. And we discover that the meaning that we had believed in was just a mental story, concept, an assumption, a dream. And it can be that we see through layer upon layer of meaning, leaving us that without any meaning really at all. Perhaps at first leaving us with more of a negative meaning. So if you have believed that you've had some kind of positive meaning, that you are a certain kind of person, or even on the spiritual path that you have had certain spiritual experiences that mean something to you, or you've achieved a certain status on the path that feed a sense of meaning, when you start to see that there is no real meaning in that, it can leave you with this feeling of like life is meaningless, and that becomes this kind of depressing meaning, where we compare ourselves to others perhaps, and we say, well, they have meaning, I don't have meaning, there's something wrong with me. And it can be a spiral down into depression, really, when we believe the mental story that life is meaningless. And that feeds our identity as well. But the truth is that life is meaningless. It's just that it's not a negative meaning. It's not a depressing meaninglessness. Actually, meaninglessness or pointlessness is freedom. Now, that doesn't necessarily just make sense like that, because we're so used to the word meaninglessness being a depressing word, or understanding that as being something very negative. But actually, when we are believing in these so-called meanings, we are believing in a fantasy, an illusion. So letting go of those fantasies and illusions, those beliefs about me, and seeing that actually there is no me here. This is just another story, another illusion. We're left with this wide open space. There's no one here, nothing happening, no one for any of it to be happening to. When we don't believe in the story of me and my meaning and my life, we're left with this space. Now the thinking wants to come in, and inevitably it will try to come in with this empty space is negative, it's bad, it should be filled with something. Give me some meaning, some point to all of this, to fill the space, to fill the empty space. Because in that empty space, there can be some uncomfortable sensations that come up. It can seem frightening. It can seem like death. Because in fact it is, when you see that you are not who you thought you were, and the meaning that you believed in is not true, this is a kind of death. The death of who you thought you were. And it's facing the death that you are. The empty space, the void. The nothingness. Our thinking wants to run a mile. It's terrifying, perhaps. But there's also something deeply relaxing about facing this. No longer running from it. Meeting this empty space. Meeting this meaninglessness. Nothing means anything. And that's okay. It's not bad. It's not a depressing thing. It's just reality. And we can just relax back into that reality. We don't need to try to fill the space with dreams of some kind of meaning for me, we can just rest back in this nothingness, let go into this. This is deep rest and ease and peace. And when we deeply acknowledge that who I am is nothing, empty, then we look around in our lives, we start to feel and we sense and we live as these humans, right, in this life. And none of it means anything about me, because who I am really is still this emptiness. And yet within that, there is this whole play of being someone and experiencing this or that, whatever you experience, right, in your life. And none of it has to have an extra layer of meaning on top of the experience. It is enough, just as it is. Because that's what the thinking is doing, right? There's an experience that happens. So you might see a flower, for example, and you look at the flower, you experience the flower, not just visually, but it also touches you perhaps in some way, emotionally, or however you experience it fully. And then the thinking might come in with a thought story. It might come in with the label of this is a flower, or even the type of flower, or the scientific label. It might come in with a story of how, oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, I wish I could see these flowers all the time. Or isn't it so sad that the world is falling apart and we can't have more flowers like this? It can come with all kinds of meaning, positive or negative, right? Some kind of story, which acts like a kind of sugar on top of the actual experience, as if the actual experience of this flower needs some extra sugar. This experience is enough, just the way it is. It doesn't have to have extra meaning. Simply meeting the flower. Of course, even the word flower is too much, but just for the sake of speaking now, meeting the experience just the way it is. You don't even have to know what it is. Meeting the sensation that you feel just the way it is. It doesn't mean anything about who you are. It doesn't provide any particular point for living. It has no purpose. It's just life appearing now, just the way it is, just for its own sake. And that is where we start to discover the essential meaning of everything, without adding some extra layer of the thinking on top of the experience. Experiencing the flower, let's say again, and knowing that that experience of the visual experience, but how it touches you, that in itself is enough meaning, more than enough meaning. It doesn't need anything extra. And of course, if the thinking comes in with whatever labels or meaning, there's no problem with that. That's also part of the experience. So I'm not excluding thought or making thought the enemy here. It's another part of the experience, just like the flower. And the thinking is amazing in how it works. how it creates meaning, how it creates identities, how it imagines meaning for me. This is amazing. But it also doesn't mean anything. So even if the thinking is creating some story, some meaning, you can take it very lightly because it doesn't really mean what it's saying. You know, just like you see everything or experience everything lightly when you don't take it to mean something about me, then it's all appearing for its own sake, for its own inherent meaning. And this is the enoughness of whatever is appearing.